10.6, solve quadratic equations.
Liar.
By the quadratic formula. So the quadratic equations are essentially the equations that we've been dealing with, that we've been factoring in pretty much all of chapter 9. So it's like when a term is squared, and then it has like other stuff, it's a quadratic equation. And so some of this chapter that we've had to skip just because of time is stuff where we're like graphing them, and they would help us to solve as like another option. But when we factored and we set it equal to 0 and we got the values, okay, that's one way to solve. But the quadratic formula is for the situation where something can't be factored, okay? And so typically we kind of want to use this as a last resort. There's another method called completing the square that we're having to skip as well for the sake of time. But that's okay, because typically in Algebra 1 people just don't understand it. You might be able to do it right, but it just doesn't click with you. Usually around Algebra 2 it starts to click. Usually people that have gotten it in Algebra 1 and they're like completely clueless, when I reteach it in Algebra 2, they're like, I get it! And it, like all of a sudden it just like the light bulb goes off and it makes sense. So anyways, quadratic formula, not hard, just a formula you have to memorize. And so the quadratic formula. The solutions of the quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 are x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where a is not equal to 0 and b squared minus 4ac is greater than or equal to 0. So a, b, and c are just numbers from the quadratic equation. A is always the number that's in front of the squared term. B is always in front of x that's by itself. And c is always the constant term that doesn't have any variables with it. So we take those and we plug them into this equation. Okay, I'm going to say it over and over again because you need to memorize this formula. It's one when you write it on the quiz. I will check it for you to confirm that you have it right. But it will be like a question, so you're going to want to make sure you know it. If you get it wrong, I'll fix it, so that way you're not, using the wrong formula for the entire quiz. But basically, you're just going to be given a problem. This is when it's the situation where we're solving, okay, where the equation, it's an equation set equal to 0, and we're solving. If it's not equal to 0, we've got to get it so that it's equal to 0 so that we can go and use this formula. So we're going to jump into some problems here. And if a term is missing, let's say that there was no constant term, then in our formula, when we are plugging stuff in, we have to put a 0 in its spot. Okay, now a can't be 0, but if a is 0, it's not even a quadratic equation. But b could be 0 or c could be 0, and we just have to make sure that we put those in to that equation when that happens. So use the quadratic formula to find the roots of the equation. Round your solutions to the nearest hundredth if necessary. We're not going to be typing them in our calculator, so we'll just leave them if it's not a perfect square like we were doing yesterday when we were finding square roots. We just left it under the radical. We'll just do the same thing with these if that happens. So number 4, 4x squared minus x minus 18 equals 0. So just for us to see it right now, A is 4, B is -1, okay, that negative goes with it, and C is -18. So what I would do is every time while you're getting used to these, because this is not a formula that you're familiar with, I would write the formula every single time. I understand when you're doing your homework you can look back at it, but on the quiz you can't. You have to just know what that formula is. So -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And eventually you will be able to rattle it off like I am without even having to look at it. Now, signs are very, very important, okay? The b at the beginning of this is negative. But if my b value is negative, what's going to happen? It's going to end up being positive. So I'm going to be obnoxious and I'm going to write all the signs out right now. When you do it, you don't have to do that. But at least on this first one, I'm going to do it this way. So I've got -b. Well, b is -1. So -1 plus or minus the square root of -1 squared minus 4 times a is 4 times c is -18 all over 2 times a is 4. So negative and negative we already said is positive, so I'm going to turn those into positive signs there. So this is 1 plus or minus the square root of -1 squared is what? 1. And then I have a negative times a positive times a negative. What's the next sign going to be? Positive. Negative times positive times negative is positive. And then now I need to multiply all of this. So 4 times 4 is 16. And you probably don't know off the top of your head what 16 times 18 is. So I'm going to set it up here to do this. Yep. So 288 goes there, and then all over 2 times 4 is 8. So then I've got 1 plus or minus the square root of 289, all divided by 8. And it is okay for you to leave your answer like that. It's 289 is not a perfect square. At least I don't think it is. Oh, it is. Scratch that. Shows how much I know. Nobody caught that. Somebody could have said it's 17. Now, if this happens, we are going to have 2 distinct answers, okay? So, at that point, then I'm going to split this up. It's going to be 1 plus 17 over 8 or 1 minus 17 over 8. So this ends up being 18 over 8, which reduces to what? 9 over 4. Or over here I've got negative 16 over 8, which is -2. And that's going to end up being your 2 answers there. Now, I'm probably not expecting you to just recognize that. So if you didn't, I probably would just count it because you have the right setup. But if it's something like up to probably 13 squared, because you should know up to that, you should be able to write that. Otherwise, if you don't recognize it, if you leave it, I'll give you the points for it, since you won't have a calculator to do it. 6. M squared plus 3m plus 1 equals 0. So, write the formula. -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So in this case, a is 1. There's an understood 1 there. B is 3. And C is also 1. Just a different one. So then we've got negative b, which is negative 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So that's 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times c is 1, all over 2 times 1. So I've got negative 3 plus or minus the square root of, that's going to be 9 minus 4 over 2. So then that gives me negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. Now, is the square root of 5 a perfect square? Nope. So we just would leave this one like this. Now again, your book is going to put your answers in terms of decimals. We're good to just leave it here because it's not a perfect square.
Oh.
10. 2t squared plus 3t minus 11 equals 0. Somebody without looking at your paper, see if you can tell me the quadratic formula.
Negative b.
Negative b
Plus or
plus
minus the square root of b
minus
squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
2a.
Good job,
Sam.
Sam. You guys have to stop copying me.
Good job, Sam.
There was a slight echo in the room.
It was
Yeah.
Jonathan, come on. Stop trying to copy them.
Alright, so I've got A here, B here, and C here. Notice C is negative. I've got to watch that sign when I put it in. When everything's positive, it's nice and easy. When I have something that's negative, I've got to make sure I watch that and make sure I'm using parentheses. So I've got negative B, which is 3. So I've got negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times A is 2 times C is negative 11. So I'm watching that sign there. All over 2 times 2. What's negative 4 times 2 times negative 11? Yep, positive 88. And I don't mind if you put like a little line through it and show what that's equal to there so that you save a step of writing, because obviously I know these get a little lengthy. So then I've got negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 88 basically is what I have, all over 4. 9 plus 88 is 97. So my final answer is negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 97 over 4. 97 is not a perfect square, so we will just leave it like that. (14) 3x squared minus 4x, no, just 4, equals 11x. What is different about this problem than the previous 3 that we've done?
Where's the C?
It doesn't equal 0.
It's not equal 0, so what does that mean I have to do?
Subtract it over.
I need to move it over, so I'm going to move the 11x to the left. Now, I could also move 3x squared and negative 4 to the right, but I like things to be, I like to have, well, it doesn't really matter, but I like to move as little as possible if I can. So, I have 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 equals 0. So, now it's in the correct form. I'm good to go. So again, I've got negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I also think if you're having a hard time memorizing this formula, I want to say those like the, I don't remember what they're called, but the group that makes all those like school videos that like helps you memorize like formulas and like the amendments to the Constitution or, whatever it is. I don't know what they're called. Anyways, but there's a video for the quadratic formula to help you memorize it also, I'm pretty sure. Because some people come in here and start singing the quadratic formula. So, you can't sing it out loud on the day of the quiz, but if that helps you memorize it, I'm pretty sure there's a song for it. If not, I'm pretty sure you could make a little tune-up in your head to help you remember it. So, do you have a question, Sam?
Why is there like plus and minus?
Because it's two answers, because when we take a square root, you get two answers. He wasn't in here yesterday. He was taking his
It
quiz.
gives you two answers, but they're the same except with different signs. So you're writing them out.
Yeah, instead of writing like. plus-
Because this is why. Because 2 squared is equal to what? 4. And negative 2 squared is equal to what?
Same.
So it's a positive and a negative. That
Good job,
works.
Sam.
Come on, Sam.
Okay. All right. Now, somebody tell me what to plug in where. Like, read off to me what I should be plugging in where.
Negative 11.
Positive 11.
Yep, negative and negative, so it's going to become a positive.
Plus or minus the square root of negative 11 minus 4 times 3
Squared.
minus 4 times 3 minus 4 over 2.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so now I'm going to simplify this. So I've got 11 plus or minus the square root. What's negative 11 squared?
121.
121. What's negative 4 times 3 times negative 4?
48. 48.
Yep, positive 48. And 2 times 3 is 6. So then I've got 11 plus or minus the square root of 169 over 6. Is this a perfect square?
Yes.
What's it a perfect square of? 13. So now I have to split it. 11 plus 13 over 6 or 11 minus 13 over 6. Okay, because this is equal to 13. So 11 plus 13 over 6 would be 24 over 6, which is,
4.
yep. And 11 minus 13 over 6 would be negative 2 over 6, which is,
Negative third.
yep, negative 1/3.
It just takes. I'm like it takes up.
It
a
takes
lot
time,
of
but it's
space.
not hard.
Yeah. They're just really time consuming. They're not hard. And I will tell you, if you were struggling to factor and solve, this method will always work.
I'm not factoring anymore.
Now, if it tells you you have to factor and then solve, but if it just says solve the equation, if it can factor, factoring's faster. But if you're struggling to do that, you can always use the quadratic formula. It will
Please make it
always,
optional.
always work.
Make it optional.
Some of them will probably say choose your method. Like some of them on the quiz actually said like solve or not solve by any method, but it said like factor by any factor by any method or whatever, because there's other ways that we can end up doing some of them. But anyways, but yes, I probably will modify the instructions on a few of them so that you can use whichever. But if it says like solve by the quadratic formula, even if you can factor and solve it, you have to use the quadratic formula. So make sure you pay attention to what the instructions say. Obviously on this quiz, we're not factoring technically. If I say use any method on the quiz and it's one that you can factor, you're welcome to do that. But if not, you can use the quadratic formula. Let's see. 18. 3g squared minus 6g minus 14 equals 3g. So since Jonathan proved he knows the we'll go there in a second. What do I need to do with this one?
Sam proved it.
Move the 3g over by subtracting. So I've got 3g squared minus 9g minus 14 equals 0. Now, Jonathan proved he knows the quadratic formula, and others proved that they can listen and repeat it. So, somebody else tell me the quadratic formula without looking at your paper.
Sam.
Negative b.
No, she
Negative
said
b
plus or
plus
minus.
minus b squared
plus
minus
Somebody
4.
forgot the square root.
I said square root.
Square root of b
Square root of b
minus
squared
minus
minus
4
4ac
over 2.
over 2.
2A.
There we go. Sounds like we're
You're
learning.
just copying me right now.
Bro, you went guys.
Sounds like we're learning it. That's
You
good.
came in for the last part.
All right, somebody tell me how to plug in the stuff.
I think it's right, but
Negative 3.
9.
Negative and
9
negative would be positive, so it is 9. There we go.
9 plus or minus the square root of negative 9 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 14. I mean all over 2 times 3.
3 being A is very popular today, apparently.
Very popular.
A being 3. All right, so I've got 9 plus or minus the square root. What's negative 9 squared?
81.
81, and then negative 4 times 3 times negative 14.
You got it, John.
I'm just trying to figure out which 12 times 14 is your best shot.
You got it. I believe in you. A little bit.
268.
168.
168.
Yeah.
Carried an extra number
I got
there.
it, guys.
Over 6. 81 and 168 is
Doing some math.
That is
249. 240. Yeah.
Yep, and I don't think that's a perfect square, but we're gonna check again because I didn't think the one
Wait,
was either.
don't check it. Let us check it.
It's not. If I'm
Yeah, I can't
asking,
just
then.
go jack it.
So then we leave the answer here. All right, one more. I want you to try it by yourself.
We're gonna give you the wrong answer, and he's gonna say cookie point. Then we're
If
gonna
you give the wrong answer, it doesn't work.
No.
See, that's why Jonathan should give her the wrong
Exactly.
She
No.
believes Jonathan.
Always right. Always right.
Actually, I want you to do this one instead. 22.
Is it?
Negative 4y squared minus 3y plus 3 equals 2y plus 4.
We do this one for ourselves.
Yep. Alright, do we get an answer?
-1 or -1/4.
I forgot to combine like terms.
Then you had way more than 3 terms.
I had -1 or -1/4.
What Jonathan said.
Yeah.
Everybody just assuming he's right.
Yes. They are.
You guys are gonna assume I'm right at one time.
I'm just gonna assume that I got it wrong.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
just
gonna assume I got it wrong too.
I assume that I got mine wrong because this is math job.
Yes!
I got it right. I think.
Alright, so it ended up being a positive 5 plus or minus the square root of -5 squared minus 4 times -4 times -1. That's where you got to really watch our signs here because all of these things were negative. Over 2 times -4. And then we've got 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 16 because 3 negatives multiplied give us a negative over -8, which that is the square root of 9 under here. So I went ahead and split it into its 2 separate things here since that was a perfect square. So 5 plus 3 divided by -8 and 5 minus 3 divided by -8. And those end up reducing to -1 and -1/4. Any questions about any of that? Do we feel okay? Need to see
Yes.
more? Good.
Yeah, we can start.
We're fine because I'm out of the room.
Yeah, me
Alright,
Yeah.
3 through 23, every other odd.
too. Oh, bet.
I think I just calculated in 23 is in fact the last problem, but if for some reason it's actually 21, then
Here, buddy.
Do you not have a
Six
What?
balls.
No, I ran out like yesterday.
6 problems?
That'll only take up the whole page.
Only the whole page.
so you have 20 minutes. You should have more than enough time to get this stuff done.